Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky. Watch every single live Premier League game this season on Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.
I'm prepared to do anything I can to play for my country again.
Do it then.
What about your start to the game?
It wasn't bad, was it?
Why should an honest answer be a mistake?
How can a modern day manager not have a mobile phone?
Why should he?
Now you're welcome along to Football Show. Philippe Auclair will join us very shortly. Nick and Arthur have popped into the studio. Rumours abound of a slight tangent tomorrow.
Just getting our practice in here.
We couldn't possibly. Second half has just started at Anfield. Liverpool 1, Everton 0 is where we are. Mo Salah on 37 minutes. Not Jordan Pickford's finest.
Oh my God. If you haven't seen this goal, yeah, it was just Jordan Pickford classic. So Everton nearly score.
Yeah, hit the post.
Tarkowski with a brilliant header from a corner, whacks the post. Like, think the Chiefs guy last night. Doink, as they call it in American football. Everton have another couple of chances. It breaks out eventually for a classic Liverpool counter-attack. They're, well stretched at the back. It might have been a goal anyway. But the ball comes in from Núñez, from the left-hand side. Jordan Pickford thinks the right-sided player for Liverpool, I'm not exactly sure who it was, is the person that this ball is going to, and drifts all the way out to his left, to the goal. Meanwhile, Mo Salah is going, this ball's actually for me, and comes in around the penalty spot and just kicks it into an empty goal, as Pickford is 5 yards over to his right.
It was like a glitch in FIFA or something. It doesn't make any sense. Why is he so far out of the line?
How did he misjudge the flight that badly?
It's Jordan Pickford.
Either he didn't see Salah or he misjudged the flight.
He had to have seen. Salah was right. Like these lads were only about 2 or 3 feet apart. It's like
a glitch.
It was awful. Like, it's hilarious when you see it. It doesn't make any sense.
Are we attributing any blame to Seamus Coleman cross coming in from his side or no?
No, it was all on the stretch. I don't even know. Like, they were so out of shape. Like, it was one of those, like, there was 10 people 10 Everton players in the box almost, So everybody was booting it back as fast as they could. Which I think, again, it's one of those things that I think if Pickford had read it right, I think Salah still would have scored. It wasn't one of those howlers that cost his team a goal. It was just very funny to see. It made no sense. As Arthur says, a glitch on FIFA is probably the best way to describe it.
Henderson did something a few years ago like that, didn't he? For Man United, I recall Liverpool might have beaten United 2-0 and they scored late on, and Henderson as well. It was like one of those things where it's like, why are you standing so far over? And Salah just passed it into us, an empty net. But yeah,
we'll chat in a bit more detail with Philippe about the weekend that was. 2 aspects loom large. Manchester City fans are going to war with the Premier League. There's no sense of, maybe. I mean, who knows what happened?
Oh, go
Liverpool. Go Liverpool.
Gakpo, yeah.
2-0, 48 minutes on the clock. Easiest to finish his back post. And he tapped in from 3-4 yards. This wasn't a Jordan Pickford glitch, to be fair. It was a really great ball in. I presume it's from Alexander-Arnold on the right-hand side. I just saw the ball going in across low, and it was so brilliant, I presume it's him. And in fact, some of his teammates are
I was actually watching the match, and I just looked away because I thought, this looks terrible on TV. I'm completely ignoring Joe looking away from him, and then I missed the goal.
Yeah.
So that'll teach me to be professional.
Everton in possession. It's another counter-attack-ish from Liverpool. Certainly moving the ball with a bit more intent and speed, and that's Robertson, I presume, who spreads the play. You have Alexander-Arnold on the overlap, and then
maybe outside
as he can.
They'll do the lines. They'll do the lines if they don't forget to do them.
Well, indeed, as he can, he finds the corridor of uncertainty, Michael.
Yeah, corridor of uncertainty, the back post, and Gakpo puts it away. It is onside.
Yes.
And it is 2-0 to Liverpool. And look, as an Aston Villa fan, I know that that we are the kings of it, of inviting. You're not in form? Come on, we're coming to town, or you're coming to Villa Park. Everton aren't the worst for that sort of thing either. And I'm sure Liverpool were delighted to be playing a Merseyside derby tonight after the worst run of form I can remember in my living memory anyway.
Where was I? Any sense that Manchester City fans would be somewhat cowed,
yes,
embarrassed, glancing at their feet, put to bed, they're going to war, and in the grand tradition of booing the UEFA anthem, they now are booing the Premier League anthem. What's that you say? The Premier League has an anthem? Yeah. It does. It's just not very catchy or memorable. Yeah. But I'm sure lots of executives in marketing departments were paid lots of money. Do you know where you would hear it most commonly? If you watch your Premier League highlights on YouTube.
Okay.
It's a bit like the SIG tune.
It's there.
And tailed. It's there, and you'd be like, oh yeah, that's like a sample of the anthem.
I'm generally not paying much attention when they're doing the handshakes at the start to kind of like line it up like as if it's a national anthem. It's like I'm either not watching it or I'm not paying attention, so I don't know this tune.
Premier League handshakes aren't of Champions League stature. So they booed that roundly.
Yeah.
And then eventually Pep walked out of the tunnel to raucous cheers.
He's following his lead, though.
That's actually a fair way of framing it. I mean, he has positioned himself as defender-in-chief. He certainly hasn't kicked a touch the way managers might, the way an Eddie Howe might kick a touch on issues like this, for instance. Off the field, nothing to do with me. And so he's hailed as, I suppose, he is the acceptable face of Manchester City for fans. He's the greatest manager of his and maybe several other generations. He has said this is borderline conspiracy.
Yeah.
And so when he walks out, he has such stock and credit in the bank. For them, I mean, he's gone to further levels because he's almost absolved Manchester City. There's a degree of, well, Pep Guardiola, his stature in the game couldn't be higher. He's defended us. So for them, I mean, you can imagine how heroic he's become.
And the fact that he even veered into territory that wasn't his own time. Like, I thought that Gerrard thing was in pretty odd taste. It was like, why he
logic.
He wasn't even the manager.
No.
Like, I don't understand that part of it. You could almost, that type of thing was like, when I heard that, I was like, okay, if he was saying that about Barcelona in similar circumstances, you'd go, fine. But, and maybe it's sincere on his behalf, but I've always felt that kind of Guardiola and City is like, it's a marriage of convenience. He needed somewhere to go.
Yeah.
They desperately wanted him.
I've always kind of felt he must think, ugh, like,
this is
a bit unbecoming to end up with City, but
this
here I
doesn't
am.
mark what I've done. Like, you know,
Yeah.
so I found it a bit baffling that he would go back into the past to start.
He does that a lot though. His explanations, he gets a lot of credit for coming out fighting, but what he's saying doesn't make any sense. Did you hear him talk about like Paul Dickoff and Mike Summerby?
No, I didn't.
understand
So
what
that's what I'm
point he was
saying, but
making.
you rightly don't understand it because it didn't really make any sense. He was like, what are you going to do? You're going to relegate us? You're going to put us down to the championship? Fine, we'll be okay. We'll come back. We'll call Paul Dickoff and Mike Summerby. It's like Mike Summerby's like 85 years old, but and also I feel like Paul Dickoff is doing well to go on like any list of former Manchester City legends, but certainly alongside Mike Summerby, and there's only two of them.
Somewhere in Kildare, Niall Quinn went, Jesus!
I think Paul Dickoff famously was with them when they were in the lower leagues.
They were.
But I would have gone Sean Goder though.
The GOAT.
Yeah. Feed him and he'll score.
The absence of any logic on the Steven Gerrard point was hard to fathom.
Yeah.
It just seemed pretty classless, didn't it? It was kind of,
I didn't feel like it was a dig at Gerrard, but just like the notion that, well, Gerrard slipped, therefore it's nothing to do with our money. But I mean, the obvious point is the money positioned you to take advantage of a Gerrard slip. I mean, there's a reason you were in joint first/second as opposed to in fifth. So it was a mute point if ever there was one.
You started off talking about the fans. Like, you do realise we're part of a media conspiracy with Arsenal, Manchester United and Liverpool have controlled the narrative and we are feeding into it.
Oh no, I was at the Zoom meeting where that was agreed.
Yeah, I know, yeah. So
Did you not go?
Oh, was that? Did I just say the silent part out loud?
It was
No,
in your
but like-
team's diary
but
there the other month.
You're talking about City fans like going all in. That's at the ground. Like they were vociferous and loud and obnoxious, I would say, on yesterday. But that's fine. That's kind of what you expect in the ground. That's what all teams' fans would be.
Sure.
But it's the fighting on Twitter and it's the kind of respectable, fan type, the kind of like the podcasting type, the media person, the calling out. Like, I mean, I saw Melissa Reddy went and did the same report that everybody else did on Sky Sports, kind of like discussing it, and got like absolutely tore down by, a few kind of like highish profile Manchester City accounts that would basically, usual social media setting people to the wolves, So it was kind of, I thought there was a lot of unseemly stuff, I would say, over the weekend, and in terms of like they're coming out fighting. We see them booing the Premier League anthem, whatever, but it's leading into all this sort of online stuff as well, where it very much is an us against them, and there's a mad conspiracy, and Manchester United and Liverpool are controlling the narrative because they don't like us coming in and doing this, but there's no sense of the actual conversation about what's happened. The Premier League have trumped up these charges, but it's as clear as day that whatever about the charges, and we'll deal with them in time. Sure, like, it's obvious the financial change that has come in Manchester City, obviously, since 2009 anyway. But it's like as if that doesn't even exist in this conversation,
It was weird.
Hard work has been undermined, basically. You know?
If you caught it yesterday during that game, the City Aston Villa game as well, they were talking. They kind of loosely veered into it somewhere in the second half, I think. And Jeff Shreeves Martin Tyler talked about it. And then Gary Neville made the point of calling the Premier League embarrassing for having taken 4 years to come up with these things. And Tyler kind of had to go to him. It's like, well, they did say Man City were very unbecoming. And it's like, I'm just reporting. That's not my opinion.
Yeah.
But it was
Uncooperative.
like, embarrassing.
Yeah.
It was like, why are you taking a dig at them? It's like, it's very odd. There's a lot of sort of, it's going to be very interesting when this keeps playing out where people fall and things. Because I don't know if you caught the joke as well at the end of the coverage. There was a great... It was funny, it was from Neville again, and it was Neville, Keane and Richards were in the studio, and they were throwing ahead to that documentary that the City won about, I think, when they came up from the playoffs or whatever. We were never here or something like that. They're not really here. And Neville and the thing says it might be the case again, and it really seemed to irritate Richards a bit, and he kind of had to. He kept laughing, but he kept turning, "Am I joking? Like it was kind of like Gary. It's going to be amazing. It'll be amazing drama.
I hadn't heard any criticism of the length of the investigation, the 4 years, until Neville called it embarrassing.
COVID as well.
COVID, sure, and lack of cooperation perhaps from City, and also I presume, having seen what happened at UEFA and CAS, the Premier League understand if you're going to come at the king, etc., you have to have your ducks in a row.
And they only have 20
analogies that I mix up there.
I don't know.
They only have 20 bodies to answer to.
Yeah.
And if you're going to take on one of the biggest ones, certainly the wealthiest,
Yes.
give or take, you'd want to have everything pretty spot on.
Well, on that note, we will bring in Mr. Philippe Auclair, who's waiting patiently. Good evening, Philippe.
Good evening to you.
So the Manchester City story is a week old only at this stage. We have seen Pep Guardiola double down in his defence at his Friday press conference, and we've certainly seen the fans make their feelings towards the Premier League anthem very, very clear. So I suppose this is the first moments of what will be a long, painful, protracted case.
Yes, and I think what you can expect is that things are probably going to go in the background in not too long. Because we had the announcement, so therefore we have huge amount of media attention. Then we had the press conference in which Pep Guardiola, as you said, the ball down was incredibly aggressive, actually, I thought. And also, it has to be said some things which are simply not correct. He's either badly informed or he expressed himself in a way that he perhaps shouldn't have. But I think it's going to disappear in the background quite quickly, because the process, despite the fact that the other clubs would like this matter to be resolved as quickly as possible for obvious reasons of sporting integrity, if nothing else. Unfortunately, the indications are that it might take much longer than what was hoped to be end of the season or before the beginning of next season. And it looks like we're looking at a much more protracted legal dispute. Because the problem is that 115 different charges, well, if you want to delay the proceedings or if you want to make it sure that it takes as much time as possible, it's quite easy because you go into great detail for absolutely every single one of those 115 charges.
Yes.
It's going to be complicated. So which is why I'm expecting, what we have at the moment, the media whirlwind and the attention placed on Manchester City's alleged misdemeanors to recede in the background. Unless, of course, should they win the Premier League, I think there might be some interesting reactions to that.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
No, I dare say you're right. Guardiola is obviously a very interesting figure in all of this. Back in May of last year, and the quotes resurfaced naturally enough this week, he talked about how he had sought assurances from the club, and he said, if it turns out, and I said it to them, if it turns out that you're lying to me, I won't be your friend anymore, was the way he put it. And he emerged on Friday, and he certainly didn't kick to touch in a similar way. He became, he assumed the role of defender-in-chief. He has taken a huge amount of his reputation in doing so, and you wonder what assurances he's been given, because, akin to a player, committing a foul or diving and then, celebrating or not celebrating, and knowing that VAR will ultimately show them up. You know, Pep
Yes.
can be very strong right now, and he gets, you know, he's lauded when he walks out at the Etihad. But VAR is coming. Well, we'll get on to VAR. A functioning, we hope VAR is coming. And so, you know, if
Yes.
Pep sort of better be right here, because to double down the way he has is an interesting move.
Well, yes, but I'm not that surprised that he did that. He can be quite a prickly character, as I think any journalist who's ever attended one of his press conferences or dared to ask an inconvenient question will testify. He's obviously been given assurances by the club and by his employers. But also, I think there is a part of it, I think he's become impervious to that kind of criticism, and has, like, very much, I would say, the Manchester City galaxy has become, in a way, you know, he's been in place for a very long time. He's been part of that hierarchy for a very long time, indeed. And I think at one point, I think when people are in a situation where basically they're not questioned, in a situation when they are protected, they develop this, yes, imperviousness to truth and to reality at times.
Yeah, I know. It did cross my mind if there must be an echo chamber aspect to life at Man City.
Yes, I mean, it's a very strange club. I mean, it's a very unique club, because we should never forget, by the way, that Manchester City is only one of a dozen clubs which are part of this galaxy of the City Football Group, which is a dimension of the debate that nobody has really quite touched upon, because it's pretty obvious that the whole project, and it's a huge project, is based, I mean, the foundation stone is Manchester City in England. Should they get into serious trouble, the whole project would actually be seen in a completely different light and would be endangered. It's a real existential threat, which might also explain why the reaction has been so harsh from Manchester City and from, as you said, this defender-in-chief, Pep Guardiola. So the stakes are so high that, in a way, I suppose, he feels compelled to behave in such a way. But, you know, it's not the first time that Pep Guardiola has said things which denoted a certain... that he didn't quite read the room properly. It's not the first time in his career at Manchester City, or indeed before as a manager, that he has said things which for him are pretty obvious, and he doesn't seem to care very much what others are thinking of what he's saying, to be absolutely honest. And neither do they. I mean, they're a behemoth. They're, you know, they crush everything which is placed in front of them, certainly in the sporting sense. And when you develop that, perhaps you develop a sense of invincibility. And as well, I mean, I'm not too sure. I mean, one of the things which surprised me is that I can understand that he would come up in defense of his club and saying, oh, many people are finding us guilty before, you know, the panel has deliberated, then a verdict has been reached. But that's not what he said. He actually said things like, we've been proved innocent at the Court of Arbitration for Sport, which is simply untrue.
Yes.
That's not the case. It was thrown out because of the statute of limitations. Everybody knows that.
And that's what I find so interesting about his position, because, you know, he must know that, because everybody knows that. That's a kind of the most infamous aspect of that caste ruling. So he must know that. And even just okay, there's what the hierarchy have told him, but he must have read about the Mancini arrangement, for instance, in Der Spiegel.
Yes.
And he must think to himself, I mean, it has been quite the decade at Man City. You know, there's been a lot of money. I just want, you know, maybe, you know, but like, and that's where I felt his head was in May of 22. That was a very reasonable, under the circumstances, response on his part. I thought that I've sought assurances, I trust these people, and they've given me assurances. If they're lying to me, I've told them we're done. And I thought that, you know what, it's not perfection, but it's not a bad way of handling those questions. So I don't know what's happened in the last 8-9 months, but that it just how no one in his world is saying, well, you know, tread softly here. It's not beyond the bounds.
Well, yes, and also the fact that he actually named quite a few clubs and a few people, including Daniel Levy of Tottenham,
Yeah.
as being almost the instigators of a cabal against Manchester City is quite extraordinary. I was half expecting charges to be brought, bringing the game into disrepute when he said that. I mean, if I were Daniel Levy, I would be very, very angry about this. Very angry.
Yeah.
And but it was said in the heat of the moment. Perhaps sometimes he can be a very passionate man, and we know, and I know that and everybody knows that we know that that we know, and so on. That there are loads of things that we can't talk about openly yet, and we've got to wait for the due process to be. But I think people can read what was in the Spiegel, can also read about the charges we were brought by UEFA and make up their own mind and think, at least have some kind of opinion or informed opinion. But we shall see. I mean, let's hope in any case that we don't have to wait like 3 or 4 years before we get to the end of this. Let's hope it's going to be much, much quicker. Because to be honest, yes, sporting integrity is also at risk here. Which is one thing we shouldn't forget. Well, because, it depends. When the decision is taken, imagine that should the charges be found to have credibility and Manchester City be punished in the way that the severity of the alleged breaches would lead us to believe, it wouldn't be a fine. It would be much, much bigger than that. Obviously, points deduction, perhaps even transfer to the championship or to the league, and whatever the league would do, heaven knows. So this is very, very serious. And imagine the impact it would have on other clubs. And I'm thinking about clubs who might hope to qualify for the Champions League. If Manchester City, who is a regular in the top 4, they finish 5th that season, when do you make decisions? When do you actually communicate the decision? Which it is a minefield. And I have to say, I was listening to you earlier on, and I think that even though I was myself very frustrated by how long it took the Premier League to actually do something or to say what they were doing, I can perfectly understand that they wanted to be absolutely 100% sure of their case before going public. Yeah. And the way that they actually announced their decision to charge Manchester City was in a way typical and exemplary of the way they've been proceeding, in as much that Manchester City had no prior warning about that. And I think that indicates the Premier League are very, very serious about it, but they're also very cautious about it, which is totally understandable. I mean, a funny thing, I use, like many of my colleagues, I used to email the Premier League like every 3 or 4 months asking them, where are you at exactly with the Manchester City case? And every time I got the same answer. And it was a cut and paste email, which was the response to my very first email in 2019. This is still what I was getting like 3 months ago. It was a cut and paste from an email that was 4 years old almost. And so it was completely waterproof. They wanted nothing to leak. Because the other thing, if things are leaking, you endanger the whole process. Yeah. Because you don't want to have a trial by public opinion or by the media, which then afterwards the defendant could say, hey, come on, guys, I think you're a bit biased here because of what has been said about us, which is what happened in part to the UEFA investigation when one of the people who were involved, you will remember that, went public about it before the decision had been taken. And that was a very, very big mistake to make in the circumstances.
Yes, very fair points. I think the watertight aspect of the investigation is a rarity, actually, and very impressive in some respects. Still 2-0 Liverpool, 68 minutes on the clock. Things are heating up on the pitch. Manchester City, Arsenal on Wednesday more than captures the eye. City have had a curious couple of weeks. The departure of Cancelo and De Bruyne on the bench and the loss to Spurs. They were better at the weekend against Aston Villa. Arsenal, more than just curious on the pitch. A wobble, 1 point from 6. I know you were at the Brentford game. We'll come to VAR in a moment. But just in general terms, Philippe, the psychology of this group, do they strike you as a manager and a group of players who will accept that pretty much every Premier League campaign, even one of a champion, has bumps and bruises and poor moments, or will a certain stage fright set in on the back of these two games?
I don't think that we've seen that what we've seen against Everton and Brentford was stage fright. I don't think so. I think the nature of the opposition must be recognised. They played Everton probably at the worst possible time, when a new manager just came in, and a manager who knows Arsenal inside out and knows how to play against Arsenal as well inside out. And then against a very, very, very good Brentford side, which is basically fighting for a place in Europe next year. And two teams which, by the way, do something that Manchester City won't be doing on Wednesday, and something which actually presents problems for this particular Arsenal side. I think the problem is more sporting and on the pitch than off the pitch. They both play with very low blocks. And I think Arsenal find it very difficult to play against teams which have got low blocks. They've struggled before this season against in similar circumstances. Against Manchester City, I don't think they will have that particular problem. In fact, it will be quite the opposite. And they're an opponent which, regardless of their class and their quality, in a way, their game is better suited to what Arsenal are doing. And I don't feel really that there is such a big drop. I think it's more of a wobble, turbulence, not a crash. They were actually better against Brentford than they were against Everton. And especially in the second half, which is one thing that Mikel Arteta will probably take heart from. And the other thing as well, would we say the same thing? Would we have the same discourse if, unfortunately for them, and fortunately for Brentford, we didn't have a massive meltdown of VAR and of the refereeing in that particular game? Would we? I'm not so sure about it. We tend to be very much, looking at, that's the result, so that's what it means.
Yes, no, that's
and
fair.
Having been at the game, I thought Brentford were absolutely terrific in the first half, by the way. And if they had been leading by 1 or 2 goals to nil, nobody would have had anything to say about it. But then Arsenal had a proper reaction and started to play like they have done in the past few months. So I'm not right now too bothered for them in terms of they're having big problems and so forth. Some players look a little bit just on the blunt side. I'm thinking in particular of Gabriel Martinelli, who has been absolutely magnificent since the beginning of the season, but he seems for me to be a little bit slow, to have heavier legs, so to speak. And I wouldn't be entirely surprised if Mikel Arteta decided to put Leandro Trossard, who's been very lively when he's come on from the start against Man City. But again, it's a very hard game to call because, to be honest, with Guardiola, you also have absolutely no idea what he will have up his sleeve to counter the threat of Arsenal. Absolutely no idea of that. But I wouldn't take that too seriously. But it's a strange season in many ways, isn't it? Because there are many things which are happening which nobody quite had foreseen, and nobody is quite dominating the league as we've become accustomed to, be it Manchester City or Liverpool, indeed. And because of that, I think when things are not working in quite the same way and are becoming a little bit more actually interesting, where people are dropping points left, right and centre, which all the top teams have done this season, we suddenly think, there must be something wrong. We'll say, no, actually, that's football.
Yes.
That's what it's supposed to be like. What we've been living the past 5-6 years is totally abnormal. We're actually going back to a kind of semi-reality here.
Yeah, fair point. The Arsenal management and players aggrieved, obviously. 2 points dropped on account of VAR in their eyes. So Lee Mason is the first ever Premier League video assistant referee. He's in his second season. I think people generally au fait with what happened at this stage. He took 2 minutes and 20 seconds to check if Pinnock was A-OK. And then it seemed once he had dealt with the Pinnock situation, the pressure to hurry up, which by the way applies to so many sports at the moment, and mistakes are being made as a result, rugby in particular, we were just talking about it in the last hour. He was perhaps rushed, and he took just 14 seconds thereafter to do a quick check of the rest of the goal, and obviously missed the fact that Christian Norgard was very much offside. Goal given, and I dare say when Lee Mason realised his mistake, he had his hands over his eyes and couldn't believe it. So Human error, I don't know to what extent human error can be eliminated from VAR, but it certainly remains a factor.
Well, yes. I mean, there are people who would say that the new offside technology, which is being developed, would enable to avoid this kind of situation where a human being is simply, as you said, pressured into making a very quick decision. But that, in a way, the biggest argument against VAR in this case was not the fact that they got the decision wrong, if you see what I mean, or the fact that even it took a long time. I'm being a bit paradoxical here. I think it shows that the idea that VAR would do away with human error is a myth. It's not true. And which, in a way, is more problematic, isn't it? So it might be that there are technological, advances which mean, and I know that Arsene Wenger is a big believer in that, in having the possibility of the ability to track the players on the pitch in such a way that you have almost an automatic signal when a player is offside in a particular situation. So we might come to that, which will then create another problem, which will be the fact that there will be two different kinds of football. The kind of football, which is already the case, by the way, up to an extent, kind of football where this technology is available, and this kind of football where the technology is not available. So therefore, you don't have the same game. It's not played in the same way, which is also, I think, problematic on almost a quasi-philosophical level. So, it was, as you said, at least they put their hands up, which is an improvement. And let's hope that, I would like, and I think many referees and perhaps the people who operate VAR as well would be quite happy to go further in that direction. Like, for example, I don't know if you know that, but in MLS, the referees do speak to the press after the games, and they have to answer 3 questions which are put together by a pool of journalists to explain the decisions they've been taking in the game. There is no such thing in the Premier League. I can't understand, I don't know why, because it actually leads to better comprehension of the laws of the game and also better understanding between the different parties. And anything that can help this understanding is a good thing, because the same thing that we thought that VAR would perhaps make things a little bit better in terms of talking about the game, analyzing the game, it's quite the opposite. We're talking more about refereeing and VAR. That's what we're doing right now, isn't it? Than we have perhaps ever before. So, yeah, it was not a good weekend in that respect, I must say.
I'm curious for your thoughts on the situation surrounding Manchester United. The reports today, very much that a Qatari bid will be in amongst the other bidders. So the group handling the sale for Manchester United, they've asked anyone interested to submit their bids by the soft deadline of this Friday. And just in case you're thinking of bidding, Philippe, they want the bid to be 1 paragraph long, and they want the amount that you're bidding and proof of funds. So you can get cracking. I'm reading curious things here about this situation. The Qatari investors are linked to the country's royal family. I'm also reading the Qatari bid has nothing to do with PSG owners. There are certain lines which look completely contradictory to me here. What's your understanding of what's coming from Qatar?
Well, for me, it's very clear. If the money is coming from a Qatar investment fund, it's coming from the royal family. And if it's coming from the royal family, it's coming from the owners of Paris Saint-Germain. Anything else is obfuscation. And that's as clear as that. There was actually talk at one point, to contextualize that, of the Qataris disinvesting from PSG to go somewhere else. It's something which had been on the grapevine for a while. And I don't know if it was because they had Manchester United in mind. But the idea that public investment fund in Qatar wouldn't be linked to the royal family is insane. For anybody who knows anything about the way things work in Qatar, it's obvious.
Yeah. So
what I'm wondering is that if we are going to see a situation where there is a selling of a stake in the club, like a first step, rather than taking control over the whole of the club. First thing, And the second thing, well, I'm waiting with great impatience, actually, for the exact identity of this particular Qatari bidder, because I cannot think that it can be anything other than an institution linked to the Qatari royal family, the Qatari government.
Yes.
And in which case, well, maybe UEFA and FIFA, but UEFA to start with, will have to look into this topic, which is multi-club ownership, which is one which has been swept under the carpet. I mean, it's amazing, isn't it? Because I seem to remember that a few years ago, it was really a target of UEFA to prevent that from happening, because multi-club ownership leads to all kinds of practices which honestly shouldn't happen in the game. And that hasn't prevented people from building huge portfolios of clubs. We were talking about the City Football Group. Well, they've got a dozen clubs on their books. You've got private investors or investment funds. By the way, investment funds means you don't know where the money is coming from, because they come from an investment fund which is taking other people's money. People like John Textor, for example, who's taken over Lyon, but also has an interest in Crystal Palace. And you've got dozens, actually. I think there's, at the moment in Europe, a friend of mine, Steve Mannery, is a specialist of this. I think he's come across more than 200 cases of multi-club ownership.
Okay.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That's insane. And I hope there's going to be a level of scrutiny. Maybe I'm talking nonsense when maybe there is a super rich Qatari billionaire who happens to be completely unrelated to the royal family and who would like to put his money into the club is always supported and all these sort of things. I don't quite believe it, but maybe I'm wrong. But in any case, I would love to know the identity of those bidders, because I'm repeating myself, but there is a major problem here in place, and one which football hasn't addressed properly. As ever, it would be a question of bolting the stable doors after the horses, and quite a few horses have locking the football doors a long time after the horses have bolted.
Absolutely. We are pretty much out of time. Just if you can, in relatively a short amount of time, there was an article that you had written you wanted to mention and push people towards?
Yeah, we did an article about the relationship between Lord Coe, Sebastian Coe, the former Olympic double champion, of course, and president of World Athletics and member of the International Olympic Committee. We found out that he was a director. I was told afterwards a non-executive director, but a director all the same, of a company which is directly involved in sports gambling. And I thought maybe that's a bit problematic. Not saying that Mr. Coe is profiting directly, by the way, from this, from the sports betting side of it, by the way. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm wondering is how it's possible that such an important figure in sports governance, a member of the Olympic Committee, could be linked to a gambling, even if indirectly. But the other extraordinary thing is that this gambling company is called Betano and is a FIFA sponsor. And that FIFA have not announced yet that they are a commercial partner of FIFA, even though they were already advertising their wares on LED boards in Qatar and then at the Club World Cup, which has just happened. So FIFA is behaving as if, no, we have not done anything. But in fact, the relationship is in place. Must have brought an awful lot of money in the coffers. And it's the first time ever that FIFA has decided to go down that route. And which I think should also be questioned, should also be put to them. But we're not getting any response, I have to say, from them on this regard. Again, is it healthy that the world governing body of a global sport like football should be in cahoots with the online gambling business and industry? I don't think so. People might have different opinion, but certainly FIFA has. And Lord Coe, in his own fashion, and perhaps indirectly, is also involved in that. And I think people should know about it. And I think this should be on the agenda and discussed openly.
Philippe, great to have you on. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Philippe Auclair with us live on the line there. Still 2-0 Liverpool at Anfield, 85 minutes on the clock. Our football show coverage brought to you by Sky. You can watch all the football you love, including the biggest Premier League games, every weekend live on Sky. Back with you in one moment.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky, proud partner and supporter of the Republic of Ireland women's national football team.
This is News Talk.
Welcome back. Mo Salah could be in here. He's checked back. He's on his left foot. It is saved by the much maligned Jordan Pickford, Michael.
Much maligned indeed, yeah. Cost possibly the hilarious fault of the first goal in this 2-0 lead for Liverpool here tonight. Pickford and Andy Robertson just got into a kind of a semi-hilarious spat before this
very
as well.
aggro man, Jordan Pickford.
Pickford was, yeah, but Robertson was massively playing up for it and kind of like aggressively laughed in his face. We're watching it here in silence, so I'm not exactly sure what happened, but
Show me an aggressive laugh.
yeah. I didn't actually do the sound there, which is going to make weird radio. But
Regretted being on radio more. That Manchester United Qatari bid is quite something. So let's just say for a second it goes through somehow. Qatari do their things at UEFA and smooth over that speed bump of multi-club ownership, and suddenly Qatar own Manchester United.
yeah.
Because of the stench of human rights, more so than money, because Manchester United have spent $1 billion on transfers in the last decade anyway, so they've been well endowed on that front. It's not going to be transformative money. I'm sure the Qataris will spend plenty. But the stench of human rights will hang over the club in the same way it's hanging over Newcastle currently. And so any Manchester United achievement, this great historic club, uber successful club, will now have some kind of asterisks alongside it at all times. Like, United really don't need that. They're not Man City. They're not coming from that low base. And you think, they'll never go for that. But then, of course, you think,
Who's not
Glazers
going
don't
for
care about
That's
that.
exactly what I was going to say. It's like you're saying Man United don't need it. What is Manchester United? It's a limited company, who are owned by a bunch of Americans who I would say don't care, especially when they wash their hands off this, and the feeling is there's a little bit of bad taste.
See, in my head, the logic was building, and Manchester United will never go for that. And then it suddenly got to who are Manchester United?
Who are Manchester United in our hearts and soul? And we'll talk to Andy Mitten about that. But who are they actually in real life? It's a company, and they'll be sold to who they're sold to.
I think Joe Glazer might be persuaded.
I suppose the Premier League are the people, and there's a whole interesting conversation there as well as to like the Premier League's capitulation, I suppose, in the Newcastle takeover that eventually came in, and some would say that they blocked it and then they allowed it, but there's people that say the British government had a lot to do with that. I'm not sure they're going to push Qatar as much as they would Saudi Arabia, but we're getting into a stage where, look, I agree with you with Newcastle and with Manchester City. You're kind of taking the second tier, that's complimentary to them. Like, they're not small clubs, but they're the second tier of English clubs. And with Manchester United, you have like actually in some ways they're the third tier, because like Arsenal are almost the second tier on their own, and Liverpool and Manchester United are up the top. And to take one of those two teams and then have three state-owned teams in the one league, like, it is a grim prospect, I have to say. Like, and I don't know, I'm sure you will give me this about Manchester United, asterisks connected to it and all. We'll get into the exact same. People think we're having a go at Man City fans. It'll be the exact same thing when it's Manchester United fans. Believe me, there might be because there's more Man United fans, you might hear a little bit more nuance, or a few more dissenting voices, I suppose. But it's going to be the vast majority are going to say, what's good for the goose, good for the gander, and why should we not have it? Why should they have it? And it'll be bargaining from day one. This will not affect people's view of Manchester United if you're a Manchester United fan.
Yeah, we touched on VAR there with Philippe. It was a bad weekend for
It was
refereeing generally,
dreadful
across all sports.
Yeah.
There is certainly something in the fact that in rugby mistakes are being made because there's a great pressure from the stakeholders at large to speed up how long these decisions are taking to be made. And Lee Mason was absolutely painfully aware that he had taken 2 minutes and 20 seconds to sort out the Pinnock situation, and so hurried up and came to the wrong decision.
Well, forgot to look for offside.
Yeah. Forgot / was in such a hurry too. Oh my God, imagine you have to think about it for a second. Imagine you're in that position and like the whole world The whole world is watching, getting fed up with how long you're taking. It is the kind of dilemma for the technology, the key dilemma, how long should it take? And that's where, I don't know. I mean, with the low try, if you'd hung on long enough, you disallow that. Barnes maybe sees other angles, he thinks differently. Lee Mason spends another 2-3 minutes
Well, he
gathering his
but
thoughts.
offside is like it's a binary thing that's decided by the lines. The VAR person actually doesn't have anything to do with it. So like that should have just been done as some
He
sort
forgot
of
to check it,
that
yeah.
should have been something automatic that was done as part of it. In fact, maybe they should have picked that first.
Yeah.
You know,
Work your way backwards.
Yeah, exactly. So look, I mean, but the whole point of VAR and the hurrying things up is like, right, I actually accept that. I didn't enjoy the long stoppages that we had on a more regular basis last season. But at the same time, if you're just going to like rush it through, or as they're doing, like, you know, like in Chelsea with the handball situation, or various different decisions this year where they're basically like not really going to change the referee's mind no matter what, like, you know, it's a once in a blue moon. Now it's like, well, what's the point of having VAR then? Nobody really wants it, but like, right, okay, maybe it's the price we pay because you want the right decisions, but they're not even interested in the right decisions now. They don't want to criticize other referees by saying that they've made an obvious error because of that bar being set higher. There is this element that it isn't just kind of like, 50-50 decision, you should have a look at this. It's actually clear and obvious error. So they're not doing it. The whole thing is a farce. Like this weekend is one of those lovely culminations where it all comes together at the same time, and you can have this, you can say, wow, what a bad weekend for VAR. But VAR is a disaster in general. Surely we all agree on that.
I don't really.
Do you not?
No, I'd say if you were to chart it all up, it's getting a lot more right than wrong, and I don't find.
But so does a
irritating.
referee.
No, but I mean more right than traditionally would have been right 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago.
Is that worth it
pre-VAR.
though? If there's still so many mistakes, is it worth it? Is it worth, like, do you remember Sergio Aguero scored that goal that was disallowed in the Champions League semi-final or whatever it was against Tottenham, right?
Yeah.
Like, ultimately the right decision was made there, but the moment was a great football moment that was completely taken away. Like, bad decisions happen both ways. They happen over the course of a game, and it's like, again,
but you're making the Platini argument that was mocked at the time, by the way.
which is what.
Mistakes are part of football. They're good.
Like, yeah, I do. I actually think there's very few. That was a chaotic time as well. So, but I think very obvious that, as in a chaotic move that ended up with an offside being missed. But generally, bad offsides like that aren't missed.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay.
I don't know. We're getting into should VAR exist conversation that I wasn't expecting to have there.
Let's not do that. Back in 1 second.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky, proud partner and supporter of the Republic of Ireland women's national football team.
This is News Talk.
Wave goodbye to winter and make it a fabulous February with GoBreaks.ie. Give yourself something to look forward to and choose from our amazing selection of 3, 4 and 5-star hotels around Ireland from just €80 per night. Whether it's a romantic hideaway, a family breakaway or a chance to get away. Book now for a great deal and go experience, go explore with GoBreaks.ie, as recommended by News Talk. Go Breaks. T's and C's at GoBreaks.ie.
Say hello to spring with lots of fresh offers at your local Woodies, with deals like 3 for 2 on laminate flooring and up to 30% off home furniture. We've got everything you need to bring that spring feeling home. And if it's the garden that you're looking to spruce up this season, you won't want to miss the Karcher K4 Power Washer for only €299. Offers are for a limited time only, so don't miss out. Shop the way that suits you, in-store, online or click and collect. Woodies, we're all homemakers. T's and C's and exclusions apply.
Your son, who smiles every time he gets a message from a certain someone. The twins, who think your son has lost his mind. Their granny, who knows that if hearts get broken, she's only ever a call away. Whatever your clan are up to, connect them with Vodafone Red Family. Add family members young and old for just €5 a month. Go online or in-store to find out more. Vodafone. Together we can.
Subject to eligibility, 12-month contract and terms. See vodafone.ie/terms. When you welcome a new furry friend into your home, Agria Pet Insure will make life simpler by providing the possibility of lifelong insurance and peace of mind for dog and cat owners. Agria Pet Insure. Protect your bond. Capstone Financial Services Limited, trading as Agria Pet Insure, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
Hey, what are you doing tomorrow morning at 10:30? Any plans? Well, if you plan on buying a car soon, then you might want to get to Merlin Car Auctions. Every Tuesday and Friday at Merlin, we have over 120 cars to choose from. Viewing starts at 8:30 a.m. and the auction starts at 10:30. Check out the Merlin Car Auctions catalogue, available today from 3 p.m. at merlin.ie.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky. All the football you love in one place. Across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.
You're welcome back. Full time at Anfield. Lap of the pitch from the players. You suspect that's an important win for Liverpool. Everton remain in 18th position, so in the relegation zone. 1 point from safety. Leeds on 19 points ahead of them. As for Liverpool, that gets them moving slowly but surely in the right direction. We are pretty much done this evening. Brian O'Driscoll will be in studio tomorrow. We will, the word on the street is, be doing a slight tangent, so all very exciting. And more besides. OTB AM coming at you 7:30 as usual tomorrow morning. Lots for the lads to be getting through. Our football show coverage was brought to you by Sky. You can watch all the football you love, including the biggest Premier League games every weekend live on Sky. We will chat to you tomorrow. In the meantime, Tom Dunn on the way.